Welcome. Thank you all for being here today. We are broadcasting live from Park City, Utah, where I am. David, you're in New York City, aren't you? Sorry. You have David Gurwitz, your brother's on here. I just saw it.
Yeah, no, I'm in Westchester, yes.
Westchester. And James, where are you?
New Jersey.
Oh, great. So thanks all for being here. Big hug and thank you to Art's brother, David, who I've known for a long time and caused us to know each other, Art and I.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you, David. And so just a little housekeeping. We can not hear or see you, but we want to hear from you. So feel free to ask questions in the Q&A or the chat box. And we have a lot of people jumping on today, so please be sure to post them as they come to mind so we can get them in the order in which they're presented. I'll be monitoring the chat box and the Q&A, so just go ahead and put them in while you're thinking about them. And also, we're going to be posting this to the Family Office Insights YouTube channel shortly after the presentation today, a day or two. And so if you care to revisit the recording or share it with others that you think would benefit from hearing what you hear today, you're most welcome to do so. And as usual, please feel free to connect with Art and James directly. We totally stay out of the way. We want to make sure that you can speak with them directly, and we'll be putting them in touch with you, and feel free to do so. As you all know, we're not trying to get in the way. We're just trying to facilitate. And so none of what you talk about with them is something that we need to be involved in making sure we have our hands on the cookies, so to speak. So don't worry about that. So with that, again, big hug to David. Thank you. Please feel free to post your questions as they come to mind. And Art, thank you for being here. Welcome. Take it away.
And thank you for the introduction and having us. I'm going to give just a couple of minutes on my background and sort of leading to how we came to this. So I have a financial background. I have a CPA and an MBA. And somehow or another, I wound up running large international law firms as the COO. So I was with Sullivan and Cromwell, and the last 15 years or so with Proskauer Rose. And so the sort of the connection to Noble Life, in large part, was formed by one of my responsibilities in the firm, which was to oversee worldwide corporate social responsibilities. So oversaw a lot of efforts that we had, and sort of kept noticing, realizing, and wondering why they weren't quite as effective as they could be, maybe should be, given the fact that these firms that I ran had enormous resources. So it wasn't like we weren't able to do what we wanted to do. We were running into sort of what I would call infrastructure issues. It was hard to get things done because things just weren't connected, and we had to spend a lot of time sort of tracking and following up and trying to connect people. So that was one of the impetuses to Jim and I doing this. I'll also make an observation that my family and my brother who's on will chuckle, have always been involved in these sort of ventures. And our grandfather used to go across the street when we lived in the Bronx Lebanon Hospital, and read books to patients there, which we always thought was pretty cool. And it was the beginning of us understanding what that meant. And frankly, I think the world's in a challenging place, maybe in a free fall. And we're hoping that and believing that Noble Life will be a way to hopefully deal with that and slow it down a little bit. So that's my background. Jim?
I come from a legal background. I practiced law in New York City for over 40 years. I retired from a law firm where I was a senior partner, a member of the management committee, overseeing a business really, which was several hundred million dollars of revenue business. So I come from the business side as much as the law side at the moment. I'm an adjunct professor at Fordham Law School, right chief securities and corporate law, but I'm very involved in this project with Art. We've been doing it for quite some time, and I'm very enthusiastic and excited about this project.
Okay, so I'm going to start and address what we're addressing. What's the issue that Noble Life is addressing, and what's our solution? Okay, so there's a highly inefficient industry. It's the social good industry, which is an industry. And within that industry, $1 trillion a year is flowing from the donors to the not-for-profits, $1 trillion. Yet there's no central bridge, there's no platform, there's no mechanism to facilitate the millions of transactions. And why is that? So the social good world is very fragmented, and to a very large extent is using 20th century tools. You sort of solicit money by calling people, by sending them a lot of letters. And they're using these tools in a 21st century digital world. It doesn't line up. So we are going to be the bridge and the platform. And our sort of motto and tagline is, we are linking those who need with those who care. And as we'll explain throughout this conversation, doing it in a profitable way. We expect our app and intend for our app to become the preferred and the recognized method that will match donors and not-for-profits anytime and anywhere in any place. And how are we going to leverage on that value proposition? There are 4 revenue streams as follows. There's a transaction fee revenue stream, similar to what credit cards companies charge, a gift card, a gift registry, and marketing of what we believe will be invaluable data analytics to the not-for-profits. And throughout the conversation, we'll explain in more depth the 4 revenue streams. So that's the issue that we're trying to solve. And I think Jim and I will just go in between conversations, so it's not having one or the other one dominating. So what's our business model and what's our strategy? Let me take that one, and then Jim will take some other ones. So we believe, and we've been created to bring innovation to the social good world by our app. And as I said, it's one of the $1 trillion industry would not be utilizing technology now. None. And we intend to be the place where donors are going to go to find worthy causes, and where the not-for-profits are going to look to find donors. We've created what we call the Noble Life Universal Platform. That's our name for it. And we are going to place it where people, and particularly young people, live, which is on their smartphones. We're going to be able to therefore have the not-for-profits show what they do and highlight the worthy causes that they have, and efficiently match that with the donors. One of the advantages we think we have is this is a geographic play. There are no limitations. So as an example, if you live in, well, New York City, and you're supporting animal rights, animal shelter situations, you can go online, you can find them, your family does it, your friends do it, but you're sort of limited to what you're really going to do, because it gets a whole lot harder to look for the not-for-profit opportunities outside of New York City. And there are many of those opportunities, and donors may feel that they want to get involved in addition to what they're doing in New York City, to other operations and other not-for-profits. And our app very easily enables that connection. So that's sort of what our business model is. The app is free. It is free to the donor. It is free to the not-for-profits. So
another revenue stream would be the giving card or registry. On our platform, we're going to have a quantity, hopefully a large universe of not-for-profits. There's no reason for them not to be on the platform. It's free to them. They will find donors otherwise they would never become aware of. And the donors will be on there looking for not-for-profits which align with their mission and their philosophy and their outlook. But in everybody's life, there are moments of first communion, confirmation, bar mitzvah, wedding, birth, death. At these times, people tend to give gifts. We'll take a wedding, for example. Brides and grooms put on a gift registry where they want this toaster and this bedroom set, wherever it may be. We believe that there will be encouragement to say, in addition, on this registry, which would be on a Noble Life registry, we believe in these causes. In addition to getting us a toaster or a tea set or a coffee maker, consider in our name and to celebrate our wedding, giving to this cause, animal shelter, whatever it may be. Likewise, a young person having a bar mitzvah, confirmation, first communion, grandma gives them $20 or gives them a rosary beads or gives them some religious object. We believe another gifting idea would be to give them a Noble Life giving card to show this young person that we always give back as well in important times of our lives. We believe religious communities will embrace this as a way to reinforce the religious or the giving aspect of a given event in a young person's life. So grandma will give them, in addition to giving them some religious object or $20, a card. Here's $20 on a Noble Life platform. Give to some charity that you wish or that you feel is important to you. We believe these two revenue streams will become ubiquitous. They'll become part of the fabric of giving, of moments in persons' lives. We believe this will be an interesting and very lucrative revenue stream over time.
So let me provide a little bit more data on that. We've looked at a variety of sources, all of which I can mention at some point. And there are 14.5 million events that cover births, graduations of high school, college, weddings, and deaths. And so we took a shot at saying, how many people are likely going to be participating in each of those items, and came up with about 200, to be exact, 209 million people that throughout the course of the year would be going to or being involved with 15 million events. And sort of then extrapolating with what we think an average gift size is, and we looked at it by research from the Wedding Wire, the Huffington Post, and others, you sort of get a total addressable market of over $14 billion of people making giving gifts through those events. And we believe, with hopefully pretty modest assumptions, that there's a significant amount of revenue that we can get from the gift cards and the registries. So while we're talking about numbers and addressable market, let me talk about the social good world in a 30,000-foot level. So the industry is $1 trillion between cash and goods and services. That's 5% of the US GDP. It's the third largest employer in the country behind retail and manufacturing. And it would be something like the 17th largest country in the world at $1 trillion, and like the 4th or 5th largest state in the country. So it's large. And there are 1.6 million not-for-profits in the US that we intend to address. So maybe I should talk about how do we intend to get 1.6 million not-for-profits on our site.
I can just interrupt 1 second, Art.
Sure,
Can comment to that. 70% of the adult population gives every year. We're a giving people. That's an enormous amount of people and gifts a year. 70% of the adult population gives annually.
Yeah, that's 150 million people a year. So, there's significant sort of interaction between the donors and the not-for-profits. So as I was saying, so how are we going to do this, right? So let me back up a little. So Jim and I have talked about this and started doing this, 5 or 6 years ago. And so maybe an obvious question is, why are we here now? So 3 or 4 answers. First one is that we both had full-time jobs. He described what he was doing, and I was running $1 billion law firm. Once we got past that and stopped doing that, we began to focus much more on this, investing in it. And then COVID came along. And so we sort of couldn't do much for those 2 years, which leads us to sort of why we are here now and sort of the history of getting here. Anyway, back to
Art, before you go into that, if it's okay with you, sure. Would you, this is more of an editorial than a question, but tell me if I'm tracking here. Aside from COVID and you had full-time gigs and having incubated this over a period of time, would it also be fair to say that because of the low cost of tech, meaning building an app, is, significantly easier than it was 5 years ago, and the cost and the time to market and all that kind of stuff, I'm imagining that that's going to help catalyze the platform so it's ready to be used.
No, that's true. And when we first started this, and I don't think an app was costing sort of under what, 500,000-600,000. You can get a really solid app now for 250,000-300,000. We intend to host this on the cloud through one of those major hosting companies. Intuitively, I sort of feel Microsoft is the best one for us, but it is simply intuitive. There have been no conversations about that. And the general cost of ownership has come down dramatically. And I should point out that we envision hiring an outside, in addition to the cloud, tech firm to help us with this. We don't envision initially hiring staff. As you heard from myself and Jim, we are not technical in terms of backgrounds. And so we would envision signing on with an outside firm that would provide developers, application people, user experience people, security people, et cetera. So yeah, the cost now of putting this product in play is significantly lower and certainly more advantageous, than what it was.
Got it. Thanks for that.
So thank you. So one of the things that we had done prior to COVID, and we want to do now as a strategy, was to get a number of core partners, in part to prove the concept, and in part to enable us to continue to then go to other not-for-profits and expand by showing that significant players are part of it. So early on, we had conversations with the Fire Department of New York Foundation, with the Waxman Foundation. We were beginning to talk to the Archdiocese of New York, very preliminarily. And the intent is to continue that. Now, you may have surmised that those were all 3 in New York, because that's where we were. But we certainly envision doing this across the country and getting a number of partners to do this. Bit 1. 2, using social media to promote this. 3, looking for celebrity endorsements. There are an awful lot of celebrities with a very altruistic views and a huge number of followers. Now, we haven't talked to Taylor Swift, but she's got 80 million followers. We haven't talked to Oprah yet, but we're hoping that we can generate celebrity endorsements. We would envision ourselves being on cable, TV, blogs, programs that would enable us to articulate what we're trying to do. Colleges, we think there's a significant opportunity in colleges. And in addition to celebrity endorsements, there are huge, not huge, but there's a significant number of athletes who are very charitable and have any number of foundations now, and that we would look to partner with them. My old firm does a lot of work in the sports world, and I would hope that we'd be able to get the introductions at the highest levels. Part of the reasons the sports industry is so appealing to us is there are 130 professional teams. If it's baseball, basketball, football, and hockey, they have huge followings. They have their own work that they do in the charitable area. And the numbers become large enough that we believe by partnering with some of them, we will turn followers that they have into our users. And by the way, in terms of some things that we've done which tie into sports, early on we did an event with the New York Yankees where we took about 40 or 50 seniors from what was either the oldest or one of the oldest senior centers in the city. They happen to be based in the Bronx. And I'm getting a little bit of the chills as I tell you this. This was probably one of the single best days of my life. We took these 40 or 50 people. Now, if you know the Bronx, you know where Yankee Stadium is, which is in the 161st Street area. This senior center was within a mile. So we arranged for buses and we got there, and the Yankees gave us tickets, and everyone had, hot dogs and French fries. And almost every comment that I got was, this was awesome. We have never been to a live baseball game. We've never been to a live baseball game. Right? So that's just one example of reaching out to the community that I just offered to you. We've done a number of other things which I could speak about if people are interested.
Let me interrupt there. It's a good example how the Yankees embrace this, and we believe that we'll take this next step further with the universal platform. The other issue to keep in mind is the 1.6 million not-for-profits. We know who they are. They're not unknown to us. They make IRS filings, which are public information. Who they are is very simple to find out and very simple to reach. They also have conventions, they have conferences, they have panels. They congregate often, and we would be part of that experience as well, bringing our message to them. Another value that we bring to the giving, the social good industry, is we will vet our not-for-profits. They must have been in business for a year. They must have followed the proper IRS forms. They must have the proper IRS permissions. And therefore, if you come on our platform and you see a given not-for-profit, could be an animal shelter in Phoenix, you can have some confidence there's been at least some level of vetting on our part. There's a legitimate not-for-profit which has been properly permissioned by the IRS. So there's some sort of curating as well on that side. So getting the not-for-profits, the value proposition for them is it's free, and we know who they are, and we'll find them.
Yeah, no, which is an important point. And the not-for-profits, the tiering of the not-for-profits is quite interesting. And in fact, if we pull up one page, I think we could find this, but I got to, of course, figure out what page it is. Most of the not-for-profits are small to relatively small. And in fact, Jim, if you don't mind, it's page 17. If we can put a scroll down to that. And I'll not read the whole page, but I'll give you the highlights. Right. So there's 1.6 million not-for-profits. This page indicates the breakout of them by category. And so you've got roughly 65% of them under $500,000 of revenue each year. And other than the 20 or so percent that have some significant funding, and it's actually, we think it's probably closer to those, only the ones over 5 million. These not-for-profits do not have funding. They do not have technology. They don't have enough staff. They struggle. They struggle every day to get a donor, keep the donor. And with the kind of cutbacks that's been in federal funding and in state funding, they're in fairly dire situations now. And since this page happens to be up, why don't I address the two columns on the right? So one of our 4 revenue streams was the marketing of data to these organizations. And we are contemplating charging a fee for that. And you can see for the first 2 tiers, which represent 30% of these organizations, we'd be at a $20 a month charge. And then you can see how it goes up a little bit for each of the organizations. So given my financial background, I sort of did a little bit of a present value analysis, right? So if somebody gives $50, or let's just say we can get one person who hasn't been giving to give $50 and does it for the next 30 years. And in a second, I'll address why that's actually quite reasonable. The present value of that at a 3% discount rate is $1,000. It's actually $1,009 to be exact. The cost of that, the present value of that cost is a couple of dollars, right? Because we're taking only a 2.5% transaction fee. So it's hugely beneficial to a not-for-profit who has a free software and only gets charged a little bit, or maybe not a little bit, a transaction fee if in fact we generate activity for them. So the reason we think this is also important to the social giving world is the following. The cash portion of the $1 trillion item is somewhere in the $400 to $500 billion range. It's 400 plus for individuals, and then you've got foundations and organizations like that. A 1% uplift. Now, I understand everyone uses 1% and it may or may not be doable, but from a mathematical perspective, a 1% uplift is $4 billion. $4 billion additional money going into not-for-profits. How many people can that feed? How many dogs can that take care of? How much education could that be in additional literacy? Substantial. And if you look at the revenue numbers, it's very substantial compared to what most of these organizations are bringing in. So I just wanted to sort of point that out.
To that point as well, there's an interesting take on this, and that's impulse giving. And we believe that's significant market, which is totally underserved, if served at all. You're watching television, you see a forest fire in California, you see a hurricane in Florida, you see an earthquake somewhere. If you have the Noble Life platform on your smartphone, in 1 second, we will obviously address catastrophic issues, will be bannered, but to put that aside, you would find, how can I help? Ukraine's a situation right now, we'll put that aside, it's international, but how can I help? Americans are like that. Right away, how can I help? On your smartphone, Noble Life app, you'll see a possibility to contribute. You press a button, you make a contribution. In 1 minute, you've made your contribution, an impulse. Without that app, it would never have happened. You would never got a computer. It's very difficult, time consuming, put your credit card in. This is very simple.
And one of the reasons we think this is appealing is in particular to the millennial, Gen X, Gen Y, and whatever other terminology generations that are out there. The younger people give, and something like 70-75% of them give at some point. They clearly do not give anywhere near at the levels of more senior people. By senior, I mean older. And there are a number of positive and negatives in that statement. So the negative is the older, the baby boomer generation and older who give the vast majority of the money are by definition older. And so if they are not replaced by a younger group that comes along, then this whole model gets even worse because there won't be enough donations. So, and the older generation would be okay with a phone call and a letter. That doesn't work anymore. So we think this is much more appealing to the younger generation who live on their phones and like impulse buying.
Hey,
Art, we've done research that a significant part of millennials do not own a checking account. Everything is done digitally.
yeah.
When they get a letter and saying send your check, or it's you. They don't think that way. They don't work that way.
Yeah. Who writes checks?
Right.
We have a question, if you don't mind. This, I'm going to paraphrase. This sounds like it could function as a organization that not only catalyzes the giving part of it, but credentials the nonprofit. So the problem has regularly been, as a donor, wondering, how much of my money is actually going to work it's intended, and who's the watchdog that's going to do that. And so there's I'm editorializing. There's an organization that does that, Star something for nonprofits.
Yeah, so I was going to say, so let's talk about that. So GuideStar is the organization. And GuideStar also sort of provides what Jim had suggested, which is the ability to find the not-for-profits, because most of them are registered with GuideStar. We also want to take it a step further in that unless the organization, the not-for-profit, has been in business a year with a 9900 filing, at this point, we don't contemplate them being on the platform. Now, we just want to make sure that we're not helping to raise funds for not-for-profits that perhaps we shouldn't. Now, we recognize that that could be, it is a challenge with respect to impulse giving for disasters like hurricanes. And the way to deal with that is to almost have a pre-approval of organizations like the Red Cross and others that go in for these significant significant problems. We don't want to be helping, you read about these scams all the time, that people scams. We want to stay away from that. It's actually a very interesting point, and frankly, we hadn't spent a lot of time thinking about it. But I think apropos to our conversation about the millennials, they're much more concerned, thankfully, about what is being done with the money that they contribute. I mean, I must admit, I would just contribute to who I contributed to. I never thought to check a 9900 or to see whether or not 37% of the money was going to overhead. So thank you. That's a really good point.
So we have our friend Gligor informs us that the GuideStar merged some time ago with Foundation Center called Candid.
I think they now call Council.
Candid, Candid.
Candid, yeah.
Our smart and successful friend Heather suggests that, or asks that this could also serves as a syndication platform. For instance, I have 500,000 committed to such and such project, and I'm looking for the incremental 250,000.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I think that fits in with our philosophy that we become sort of the intermediary between all these things that we're talking about. We sort of, I'm going to give you one analogy. We sort of kicked around whether we should say it or not, but I'm going to say it. We want to be the Amazon of the social good world. You think of something you want to do, you think it was something you want to, an organization you want to be with, and boom, you connect on our platform. We talked about this the other day. You want to go get a hose now for your garden. I don't think you're generally getting in the car. Well, maybe you are, but getting in the car and going to Home Depot and trying to figure that all out when you can order it and it shows up the next day. We think that's essentially the same philosophy with respect to giving. In particular, as Jim said, with impulse giving. You walk by a church that looks like it needs repair, you may want to give something. And we actually, there's one other thing that I should have addressed that I didn't yet. People not only want to give money, they want to give services. They'll do both. So take the example of a church that needs repair. We could set up and would set up a particular page for that, lack of a better word, where people who are carpenters or electricians or HVAC, I mean, none of which I could do, but and gather both a group that can actually fix what's going on, in addition to generating income donations to do that. So, and to go back to what I said earlier with what I was doing early on with my law firm background, this would have been very helpful. People, we couldn't even track everything. There was so much going on that I actually had to hire somebody to track all the stuff. And it was pretty inefficient. And we clearly felt there were ways that we could have done it better, except that we didn't have tools to do it. So
we saw this also in my neck of the woods here in New Jersey. We had a terrible storm several years ago. You may have read about Sandy. And people, the outpouring of help for people who had been devastated, lost their homes. And it struck me at that time, it was early on, we started talking to Art, and I mean, there was no central way to deal with that. There was no way to coordinate it. There's no central organization, how to effectuate your impulse giving. This would be the solution to all of those problems.
And so, when we started talking about this and we started doing it, frankly, a lot of the reaction from people we would talk to is, oh, so you're another charity. And we're not, but to some maybe metaphysical extent, we are, in that this is a world that does good, has a ton of money going through it, but yet has so much more that it can do. I go back to the world's in a free fall. You got 1.6 million organizations that want to help. I mean, where do you find that? And yet don't have a tool, one tool that can help them. We believe this is the tool. So let me talk a bit about what we need and what we would do with funding. I go back to technology. We would need to develop the app, hire a outside firm that would work with us and handle the technology, branding, which would likely involve bringing on some PR, not bringing them to us, but working with PR and other type of people. And that's really the play. I mean, Jim and I are not looking to take any salary or money out of this. In fact, it's been the other way around. I put quite a bit into it. But that would be where the money would go. This is a technology play at the end of the day, right? Amazon's a technology play. And when getting the app right and being able to scale it is the most important thing. I remember reading about Reid Hoffman when he was talking about LinkedIn before it became LinkedIn, and how, in his view, it was going to be it would take at least 500,000 users before the hockey curve or the hockey stick began to go up the way hockey sticks do. And so we sort of feel the same way. And so we are not projecting any users year one. We're projecting 1 million users in year two. We have specifics as to how we projected all this stuff, recognizing their projections. And then in year three, we'd be going to almost 7.5 million, 18 million in year four, and 33 million in year five. One of the comments, observations may be, well, that doesn't sound that high when Twitter's got 200 million and things like that. It may or may not be, but this is also a new initiative, getting people to give and getting organizations to connect, via an app is new. And so we felt that we'll make inroads and significant inroads, but didn't want to even go near a fact that 200 million people will use this. So let me sort of reiterate, and I clearly am not going to spend I'm not going to go through what we talked about for 40 minutes, but people need help. There are organizations that do help. Our tagline, if you want to go back to the first slide, Jim, is linking those who care, and there's 150 million people who care, with those who need, and there are more than 150 million people who need, and we will do it in a profitable way, so that we'll actually have a company that is a profitable company doing this. There are companies that service the social good world that are very profitable. Blackboard, for instance, which does a lot of software and other sort of infrastructure things that are used by not-for-profits, tracking donors, things like that. They're a $5-6 billion valuation. So, the social good industry spends $800-900 million a year on million dollars a year on billions on buying things throughout the year. So it's a big industry, and we believe that we can both benefit it from a social good point of view and create what I've talked about, what Jim and I have talked about.
Hey, Art, would you mind talking a little bit more about I don't want to call it competitive landscape, but others that are doing similar things
Sure.
in sort of piecemeal.
Right.
And so people can get a sense that there is activity, but
Sure.
it's not been converged all into one.
Right. So the one thing I'm absolutely not going to say, because everyone would laugh, is there's no competition. Of course there is. So what is done now, and I think the key word that Arthur mentioned is piecemeal, is I'm going to give you a bunch of the following examples. So PayPal runs about $10 billion a year through their systems that go to charitable organizations. When you have the option when you buy something from Amazon to allocate, they'll make a donation of some percentage to an organization that you pick. Surprisingly low amount though, given their volume. The credit card companies, Amex, Visa, MasterCard, have programs where they'll try and facilitate giving. Facebook, I believe, gives some software for free to not-for-profits to help them run their business. And my research on that is the result is mixed. Some people think it's helpful, others say it's just difficult to deal with the organization. So there are people who are doing this. And by the way, there's Giving Tuesday, right, which collects, I think it's it's probably way over $100 million a year. And if you're not familiar with Giving Tuesday, somebody came up with this great idea, and I don't know what day of the year it is, but it's a Tuesday. And organizations, some of the financial organizations give away their profits for that day. So some of that flows through PayPal and others, but it's still a relatively small percentage.
And it's a nice afterthought, but it's not a primary focus. While you're there, if you want to give some money, you can round up some places. You go to a store and they say, would you like round up and give to a charity? So there's people who do this online clearly, and there's payment streams that going online clearly.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that someone has really had the focus of strictly having a platform that has the not-for-profits and the donors, and they're matching each other.
To sort of further on Jim's point, you could get the sense, if you're cynical, every now and then my Bronx background will come out and be cynical, that all the organizations that I just mentioned are doing it because it sort of looks good and they need to do it. But there's no wholehearted, flat out, we're going to really blow this thing through the roof effort by any of those organizations.
You guys mind if we take another question?
Of course.
No, would love it. No.
So our friend Javier recognizes what you said, there's 1.5 million organizations and you can find them. Tens of thousands in each category. How can, as an organization, one stand out in your app? Will there will the app be enabled to help with events, auctions, that sort of thing?
Yes, yes. Every organization will have the ability to post promotional items about themselves. How they're going to able to stand out in a world of 1.6 million, I'm not sure, frankly. I don't know how they'll be able to legitimately promote, sort of an animal shelter, in Scottsdale to the rest of the country. But they're certainly going to be able to promote what they're doing in the way you mentioned. Tell you, one of the other things we're looking at, and we think down the road would be great, is AI and VR, right? So right now, I don't think anything exists in this world. And if we could get the predictive capability of saying, it's likely that Jim next year is going to give, $2,406 because he's done it in the past, and he leans towards these organizations, then maybe it takes the point you just mentioned and says, take a look at those because you haven't looked at it before. And maybe it says to those organizations, here are some people you ought to try and reach out to, and we can try and drive the focus. The other thing that I've thought about is whether a VR, AR, virtual reality, augmented reality approach would be interesting and meaningful. It goes back to people would like to know what their money goes to. And it seems like it would be sort of interesting if there was a way to visualize that. So somehow or another, you feel like you're in the animal shelter doing something. It seems to me if you can go into a department store and you can have VR that shows you how your jeans are going to look, or a shirt's going to look on you, that we should be able to do something way more psychologically appealing with VR.
In terms of standing out, we believe that the not-for-profit, in addition to having just some basic facts on the splash page, when we go to that, some basic facts about it. We helped 420 dogs last year. We prevented 1,700 dogs from being euthanized by having shelters find them for them. So have some background of who they are, what they're doing, and what they're really engaged in, and how your money is going to be used. So each not-for-profit will have the ability to give something about itself to at least inform the potential donor what they're about.
And maybe sort of one more down the road dream is putting programs in that say, we're going to do something to make sure that 100,000 kids have access to math, English, whatever. And by the way, how's one way to do it? There are an awful lot of retired school teachers and professors who we hope would sign on to this and be able to mentor people. Can we plant 1 million trees as a goal? Can we give out, 1 million meals? And I think, by the way, Tony Robbins does that. And I think Branson's foundation does some of that. And they do well. I think Tony Robbins' organization gives away 50 meals a year. That's great. We think we can play in that world.
So I don't want to interfere with your flow, but can whatever you're going to talk about next, maybe thereafter talk about the ask?
Right. So maybe we go to the ask if that's okay, because I think we've articulated the problem we're trying to solve and how we're going to do it. So we are asking for $3 million for 20% of the company. The $3 million would go into 2 primary buckets, technology being the key, and the second being the branding and the marketing. The feeling being, we obviously need to have an app that people are going to use, and be good if they know we're around, the branding and the marketing. And we have very detailed financials. I don't know if they were circulated or not, easily can be. We've done a lot. Given my financial background, I worked with a very sharp young financial analyst out of in the Stanford area. So we have a lot of financial data that we can share to show how we put all this together and how we thought it through.
I'm imagining it's not unlike other raises in that the structure of which is up to, on some level, the investor being straight equity or convertible note or something like that.
We're
Yes.
open, we're open to all that discussion. We're open to those discussions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And assuming that you got funded shortly, how long would it take, do you think, to have a minimal viable product in terms of the app?
6 to 9 months, because that's what everything, all the research that we've done to get a really good app. Not one that's going to be used by, I don't know, GM or something, but to get a competitive app is a 6 to 9 month process.
Yeah.
At the same time, we would be laying the groundwork for the branding efforts by having conversations with organizations that we've mentioned to start the process. Certainly, they're going to want to see, right? They want to see the food before.
Yeah. It's
but
totally.
we think there's a lot of parallel paths, and once the app is ready for showtime, we hit everything fast.
Heather, our friend that had the earlier comment and question, offered some interesting, which I'm sure you've thought of on some level, but there's endless amount of money in donor advised funds that gets unused.
Right.
There's endless amount of funds in foundations that gets unused.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to fall on my sword and admit that I had a failed enterprise. I guess it was 12 years ago. I started 100percentmatch.org. And the purpose was to harvest the corporate matching funds for the employees that never got used. And even though they were happy to deploy 100% of it, it sat on their balance sheet and got rolled over every year because no one was aware how to get the matching done. And
in that situation,
we weren't ready.
You have a lot of unhappy people in the firm who say, wait a second, what are you doing here? We gave you money and now it's sitting in the bank.
Yeah.
Frankly, we had not envisioned, or have not envisioned yet, going after what you mentioned, the unapplied money, for lack of a better term, because we thought we were going to focus initially on what we've talked about, this afternoon. But these are all great, great areas to go after.
Yeah.
My experience, everyone has their own experience, right? So my experience in working with the firms I worked with is they want to do stuff. You keep people, take a day off and whatever the different programs were. They're just not successful, because at the end of the day, your client calls and you need to do something. Your kid's got a baseball game, whatever. And so the good efforts just don't materialize. And in part, we think that this tool on a phone that everyone has apps on and is used to dealing with will move the needle.
Maybe use money as the tool, right?
Tends to work in a lot of areas.
Indeed. Heather, another valuable contribution here is said that there's some legislation that's going to help deploy some of this capital in donor advised funds.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so some
that's great.
But So let's wrap it up with what's the best way, aside from the obvious, just contact Art you directly?
Yeah, me or Jim. Do people have our email and phone type?
You're going to get you're going to get a list of everybody, and you can send something to them. And then the number of things that we posted have your email on it, so they can find it there as well.
Yeah, I think email or phone. Well, I'll go back to probably phone solicitations and direct mail would be accepted, but silly. So no, of course, email and.
Somebody said to me the other day they were going to send me a check,
Right.
And I said, well, that's nice that, you know, you're going to send some funds my way, but I haven't taken a check in 10 years.
Right.
Like, I mean, forgot, what is that, right?
No,
You know,
it's what Jim said.
Yeah.
It's not the world we're in anymore,
Yeah,
and we're not going back.
yeah.
You know, we were chatting last night, Art and I, about this, and we got off the call, and I went to get the mail, and I got the mail. Aside from the bills, which are fewer and far between now because most of it's direct pay anyway, there were 3 solicitations in the mail.
No,
Direct mail.
yeah, direct mail is having a resurgence because it's so
Yeah.
cheap.
Right, but
Right.
it went right in the trash. I didn't even look at it.
Yeah, I know.
It
Yeah.
doesn't reflect me. This is going to eliminate all of that in terms of it'll be more targeted. It'll be out there, and the donor will find you. It's opposed to now that the nonprofit has to find the donor.
Yeah.
This reverses the business model entirely. The donor finds.
I know we're almost out of time, so let me just address one thing with respect to that. Financial. So the sort of the hit rate on direct mail is 2-3% max, right? If you get 3%, you had a really good solicitation, but you spent money on $100 pieces of mail. As I pointed out with the present value, the present value is actually, it's really low as compared to what we believe, and I articulated earlier about what ours is. And it's free. At the end of the day, nothing circulates unless people use it.
Yep, totally.
So I'd like to say, on behalf of Jim and I, thanks to you, Arthur, for organizing
Of
it.
course.
Thank you, David, for introducing us, and to everyone who participated. We've quite enjoyed it and appreciated the opportunity to explain something that we put a lot of time in and our soul is in.
You're so very welcome. Thank you for being here. And we're going to be in New York City with Art and James at some point in the next month or so. So we'll be able to visit in person. So we're going to be following this effort very attentively, and I really like what Art's doing. And you know, as I mentioned, we know David well, so we're in the family. Even though we're Greek Orthodox, we can pretend we're otherwise. But thanks for doing this, guys. James, nice to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We enjoyed it. Thank you.
And as I always say to the group, thank you for sharing with us the only thing you can't make more of, and that's your time. Until next time, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.